There's a brand new face-to-face with the developers, and siege units might be the future meta of Rise of Kingdoms. So in this video, we're going to get a look at what the developers have to say and how you can prepare for this new siege future. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, and I like to review the face-to-face with the developers so that we can figure out what the future of Rise of Kingdoms is and be ready for it. I think I've got some big advice for you today, so if you're into videos and guides that help you prepare and make good investments in Rise of Kingdoms, consider subscribing to the channel and throwing a like on the video. That supports the channel, and I do really appreciate it. I do like that the developers have moved into this monthly cadence for the face-to-face updates, and so let's get started. First and foremost, I hope that commanders can be reset once in a while. Now, there are already skill resets in game, but I think they're asking for a complete reset of a commander's skills. And I don't blame you. Let me read the developer's response because I'm already ready to jump in with my own here. Commanders and their related resources are an important part of the game's core data. We still retain a discrete attitude towards the commander reset feature and will not develop one for all governors for the time being. We have also noticed that many beginner governors have trained commanders that do not match their expectations due to unfamiliarity with this feature. This has caused a distinguishable gap between beginner governors and other governors. In regard to this situation, we're currently planning to launch a commander reset event in some new kingdoms for accounts registered no more than 15 days. First of all, they're actually going to make a commander reset, but for governors who have accounts, if I'm understanding correctly, no more than 15 days old. I mean, how much could you have invested in the first 15 days of the game? I'm pretty cool and on board with a reset feature for people that are 15 days in. But I think the main complaint here is toward the irrelevance of commanders in the end game and the fact that there is a lot of power creep in this game from the commanders that are in the early game to the late game, such that if you are free to play or low spender or even mid spender, if you work on any of the gold key commanders other than like Martel or Mehmed and maybe one or two others, like they're basically irrelevant in Season of Conquest. Even with the museum buffs, they're simply not the meta. So I think the idea behind could we have a commander reset is actually driving at the fact that commanders are made irrelevant due to the power creep in this game. And irrelevant is again a strong word, but you know, if you could have an expertise Nevsky versus expertise El Cid, I mean, you're going to win that trade 2-for-1 every time with the Nevsky compared to the El Cid. So I think the thing that would actually be more valuable is to take a harder look at the power creep, if that's what we're going to do, and say, hey, like, are we on board with the rate of power creep? Should we give maybe a little bit more to the museum buffs, to the commanders that are in there, so that, you know, early game players can invest in some of those other legendaries? But I've covered really in depth what you should do in the early game and how you should spend sculptures. So if you're a newer player, I'll have a card up in the top. You can check that out at the end by tapping the little info button. So from here, let's go to the next question. I hope naval warfare can be held more often than Champions of Olympia. So naval warfare will not be held as often as Champions of Olympia. We'll try to hold more naval warfare events during festival events. We're also developing more modes to enrich governors' daily gaming experience. So this is cool. They're adding more game modes for the daily experience. I am really curious for what that will be. I would also really like to see them take another crack at what naval warfare is for Rise of Kingdoms. I feel like the marketing push and the momentum the game got was absolutely monumental from naval warfare, and then it's just like kind of a side mini game. So I do kind of wonder if there's more opportunity that's just sort of sitting untapped with what naval combat could be. But I do kind of agree that I don't think there should be a Champions of Olympia League for the sort of sea battles that we have in-game periodically today. And I do think actually that festival cadence is appropriate given what the event is, right? Next question is that the matchmaking mechanism of Champions of Olympia is not fair. So this is interesting because shouldn't the matchmaking for Champions of Olympia be based off of your rank? Shouldn't you be matching against people of equal rank? Isn't that the point? I think that's how that's supposed to go, right? So I wonder what's not fair here. I think that it certainly could be frustrating if you have people sandbagging their rank, so they purposely lose a bunch of matches and then queue up and get easy wins for some reason. But we've spotted the issue during our recent data review and have started the matchmaking optimization for Champions of Olympia. I just find that really surprising. We'll inform you immediately once the optimization is ready and updated. I wonder what was not working about the matchmaking. I feel like the whole point of a rank system is you fight people of equal rank. And you could have people with really great equipment that actually suck, or really sucky equipment that are really good. And so you're supposed to fight at your rank. So I'm really curious to know kind of more what they found, but I would be very surprised if they share those details. I am really interested for what this fix will be. I hope the practice matches for Ark of Osiris can be held across alliances and even kingdoms. Okay, so I have some insight into this one, but I'll wait to share it until I've read their answer. For now, we don't plan to make any changes to the practice match mode of Ark of Osiris. We're currently developing a feature to allow official matches to be organized and held more easily. Once developed, all our official communities will hold more community competitions, including but not limited to online leagues, offline leagues, and championships. I suppose the difference between an online and an offline league is like maybe they're preparing for like in-person events where you could have a tournament at the event. We'd love to provide every governor with more opportunities to join competitions other than Ark of Osiris and Ark of Osiris League to hone their skills. So this is really cool. And I know the content creator Bulburitos was really pushing for the ability for content creators to have their own, like, Bulburitos Cup, right? And he could host an event. I did this with Champions of Olympia, where I tried to get a bunch of people to put together teams from different kingdoms, and we made a ladder system. And I would have done this tournament with a paid prize, like every other week if there was actually interest, but the viewership just wasn't there to actually support doing something like that, and the matchmaking made it a little bit difficult. So I think that the idea of having community-based events, or at least official matches, and to be able to do that more frequently other than League and regular Ark, could be cool. Especially if they make more changes to the Ark of Osiris game mode, so that honestly it feels a little more like a MOBA. I think that'd be cool. Okay, this next one is a big one. And this is probably what I'm going to make the thumbnail of the video, because this is such a big deal. I suggest you remove the siege weapon technology from Crystal Technologies. It's totally useless. So this is a big jab at the fact that when you enter KVK Season 4 and beyond, there's this stuff called Crystal Technology. It's technology that you work on for each KVK you join, and then it's reset. It gives you season coins as you go, and you accumulate it, and it gives you a benefit when you're in KVK. And the siege technology is a gate to working on other things. You have to get it as a prerequisite before you can advance. But nobody's running around with siege units. And I mean, there's a couple exceptions. Where is it actually helpful? I mean, if your city gets rallied and you have siege in there, okay, it's doing something. If you're gathering and somebody, it's your gatherer, I guess it did something for you. And yes, there's also the fact that you can make a march that's a trap march that you run into like an altar or a ruins fight, and you basically pick commanders that give a lot of stats to siege when they're gathering, and you put them in there, and you put a bunch of siege gear on them, and you put like a fighting set of talents on there, and yeah, you bait people into hitting you, and you can trade like 2 or 3 for 1. If I can find a video where I described that could be good, I'll put a card up in the top. I may have hypothesized about that in the past, and people send me reports, and man, it works. So let's get into what they actually said, though. We're currently changing the general design concept of the siege weapon unit. In the formation system, siege weapons will be granted new abilities. Okay, this is a big deal. New abilities could be very big. It could be related to like just the fact that you can enter into tower mode and do damage, or they could be revamping siege units to actually be really strong for certain things. Kind of like how right now siege units are countered by every unit type, but they could change something around with that. I don't know, but this is big what they're suggesting here. We hope, other than a carrier vehicle, siege weapons can also be a battle unit that has great value in the battle system. By then, the Crystal Technology can make siege weapons even stronger in battle. Wow. So what does this mean? I mean, the developers have hinted at the idea that we could be getting more siege equipment and commanders and engineering talent trees in the future. This could be a thing. So I don't know if you need to prepare for having 1 or 2 or all of your marches be siege. Probably not all. But they'd have to do a couple things to make siege usable in the field. First of all, they have to fix the march speed. Like, I can't run around with 4 marches that are fast and 1 siege march that is 100 times slower. It's never going to work for general open field fighting. And I get that you might want to use a siege in a tower mode, but are we just going to have special marches that we sit around for certain situations that we pop into siege mode? Are certain players going to go for this versus other players that do not? Like, if you're free to play or low spender, is this more advantageous to you to kind of sit back, find these right opportunities? You're not taking sev wounds, or maybe everybody does this role where you try to be really opportunistic and not take a lot of damage when you fight. I don't know what this is going to be, but you probably should prepare. So what are the ways that you can prepare? First of all, Imperium kingdoms like 254 are going to be in a weird position. We delete our siege units, and we do that specifically to get big migrations into our kingdom. We don't delete for matchmaking purposes. We delete for Imperium purposes. There's a big difference there. But kingdoms that have been deleting for matchmaking or other reasons may find themselves wishing they had some siege to actually fight with. So that's one really big implication. Siege and having a bunch of T5 siege could end up being super relevant again. The other thing is that if they add new equipment and they add new commanders, you just need to think about how many sets of equipment you're making. So as an example, if I'm considering making like a 6th set of equipment, maybe I should pump the brakes on that for now, right? On my restart account, I have 5 good sets. Maybe I should pump the brakes on making a 6th because maybe I'm going to be making a siege set down the road, okay? And rather than having to, like, can you imagine disassembling legendaries, or in a best case, getting rid of some epic equipment, and, you know, I lost out on some gold, you might want to prepare for the possibility that siege are coming. You heard it here. If you haven't heard me say it before when developers have hinted at it, here it is again, that you got to prepare. So, like it or not, we'll see what it becomes. But it's probably on its way. All right. So siege will be relevant. And by the way, if you have any other ideas for how you prepare for a siege unit being relevant again, definitely let me know down below in the comments. Are we going to get civilizations then for siege units? And by the way, when the formation system lands, you might want to save some number of armaments that are designed around siege. If they have a lot of siege stats, that could be really valuable down the road, okay? But let's continue to the next part here. When a T1 troop is used to fight against a T5 troop, it's not fair that the cost of the T1 troop is much less than the T5 troop. Let me give context here, because if you didn't know, there are people that run around with full T1s in Attila, Takeda, that run around with full T1s in Pakal and Herald, marches that trade really weirdly well. And they use these T1s because their repair cost is actually going to be pretty low compared to the repair cost they can inflict on you. That's what this question is about. And I think it's actually pretty astute. We've noticed this situation and are planning to grant an additional buff to high-level units when they fight against low-level units. Oh, careful what you wish for, folks. We've noticed this situation and are planning to grant an additional buff to high-level units when they fight against low-level units in the past glory quest of the Season of Conquest in order to avoid the situation happening again. With the mentioned buff, there will be a noticeable decrease in the ratio of severely wounded units if a governor's troop unit level is clearly higher than the enemy's. We're currently testing the details and prerequisites and will launch this buff in recent version updates. Please stay tuned for the future announcements to learn more details. So here's what the developers are saying, and let me make sure I understand this correctly, so keep me honest in the comments. This person said, hey, did you notice that lower tier troops take a favorable resource trade against higher tier troops? And the developers seem to said, hey, we did notice this. So what we're going to do is not just fix your T1 problem, but they might be fixing this for like the T4 to T5 ratio as well. Like this actually could be a big jab to using full T4 marches in the field, because what I think they said is when you repair your RCF, you get a series of buffs. Okay, and one of the buffs they sounds like they're going to add is something that makes it so that higher tier units trade better against lower tier units. Like the developers might actually be doing a hard shove here to using T5s in the field. but we don't know how big this is or if it's really just a jab at T1s. Hopefully it's just a jab at T1s because I'd really like for T4s to actually be, they're fine in the field. Honestly, they are. If you're a T5 player, if you're not paying attention and you feel good about a trade, like, okay, great. You're happy. The T4 player is happy because they actually beat you on the resource trade. Like, I think it's all fine. But the T1 thing is kind of annoying. And I actually made a really funny short of me running away from a T1 player specifically for this reason. So if you want to see that video where I run like a sissy from a T1 player, I'll have that card. It's like a 60-second video in the end screen. Alternatively, if you're looking for formations, that card is also going to be in the end screen in just a minute. You need to prepare for that. And when you watch that video, just think about the fact that siege units could be powerful, and you might want to save your armaments that are for siege.